What a week it was. Some of us wish it never ended. Midweek, CARICOM heads and the world's most influential leader touched down on the Rock and inspired many. Experiences which made a nation proud. Between the pages, a special edition of Issues and Answers as we hear from U.S. President Barack Obama on matters of concern to the youth. And it's Farmers Month. In observation, we highlighted the robust reap of a group of St. Thomas planters. This is Jamaica Magazine and I'm Adrian Atkinson. Today we're planting seeds of prosperity. Please stay with us.
Get ready for Jamaica Film Festival 2015. From July 7 to 11, venues across the corporate area will be showcasing the historic, dramatic, comedic and animated sides of Jamaica. More than 300 minutes of showtime, some 15 films, 4 days of experiencing the talents of local actors, scriptwriters and directors. Gear up as international film investors invade the country to watch Jamaica. For more on Jamaica Film Festival 2015, contact Jamaica Promotions Corporation Jampro by phone or email.
Greetings, Massive. Hey. Wagwan, Jamaica.
Yes, President Barack Obama was feeling the Jamaican vibe and showing off his best patois tongue. Though cheerful, the U.S. president was very serious on empowering regional youth, so much so that he announced 2 initiatives to support the educational and entrepreneurial development of young people in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Today I'm announcing nearly $70 million in U.S. investments in education, training, and employment programs for our young people throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. And these investments will help young people in unemployed and impoverished and marginalized communities, give them a chance to gain the skills they need to compete and succeed in the 21st century economy. And that's not all. As president, some of the initiatives I'm most proud of are ones that increase my country's engagement with the next generation of leaders like Angelina and Jerome and all of you, leaders in government and civil society and entrepreneurship in the private sector. 4 years ago, I launched an initiative called 100,000 Strong in the Americas, and the goal was to have 100,000 U.S. students studying in this region and 100,000 of this region's students studying in the United States by the end of this decade, and we are on track to meet that goal. So today, to build on that progress, I'm proud to launch the Young Leaders of the Americas Initiative right here in Kingston.
Just after those major announcements, Mr. Obama fielded several questions from local and regional youth at a special event held at the University of the West Indies. Next, their issues and the President's answers at the Town Hall with young leaders.
We're going to go boy, girl, so everybody gets a chance. So it's fair. And before your question, please introduce yourself and tell us where you are from. This young man right here in the sharp-looking checkered shirt.
I'm Jermaine McKenzie, and I'm a focal point with the Global Fund Board. As it relates to human rights and social change, how do you make the decision to allow societies to go through the natural evolutionary process of having change occur on their own versus having governments exert policies to make these same political, social changes? Yeah,
that's a really interesting question. It's an interesting question, and it's one that I have to struggle with all the time. You know, every society, as I said, is at a different phase in development, in their own history. They have different cultural traditions. And so the way I think about it is that the United States has certain core values and principles that we believe deeply in. And that doesn't mean that we won't work with a country that doesn't precisely abide by those principles, but we will still speak out. there are times where a country is clearly engaging activities that are so egregious that it's not culturally specific. It typically has to do with the government wanting to exert control over people and oppress them. And in those instances, I think it is entirely appropriate for us to speak out forcefully, and in some cases to not do business with them. I mean, you look at a country like North Korea. I mean, obviously Korean culture is different than American culture. On the other hand, you look at what's happening in South Korea and you look at what's happening in North Korea, and those are two entirely different societies. And I can tell you which one you'd rather live in. And if you have a situation in which people are being murdered simply because they didn't agree with the government on something or didn't want their economic fate to be entirely determined by the whims of some government bureaucrat, and suddenly they're sent to a labor camp, that's something where we as an international community have to speak out on. And then there's some issues that may be culturally specific, but you know what? I think they're wrong. I won't, we're not going to try to force that country to change, but I may try to shame that country. There are nations where slavery still exists. And that may be, part of the ancient culture in that society, but slavery is wrong. And I'm not going to give them the excuse that, well, this is who we are. In Africa, and I can speak, I think, fairly as somebody who is the son of an African father, there are practices like female genital mutilation that may be part of the tradition there, but it's wrong. And I'm going to say so. And it will be U.S. policy to say that it's wrong.
Lysandra Ricketts, I work for the Branson Center of Entrepreneurship. Question is around immigration.
Yeah.
We've heard a lot about your immigration policy for undocumented immigrants who are currently living in the U.S., but what about hopeful families that are seeking a legal pathway for immigration into the U.S. but are finding 7 to 10 year delays before they even can get to apply? I'd love to hear you talk some more about your policy regarding shortening that timeline and making it less onerous on the applicants.
Good. That's a great question. The United States is a nation of immigrants. And this region has contributed to the remarkable progress that the United States has made over the last 2 centuries. And my goal during the course of my presidency has been to make sure we continue to be a nation of immigrants as well as a nation of laws, and that we're attracting talent from all around the world. It's part of what makes us special. So we need to fix what is right now a broken immigration system. Part of it is dealing with those who are undocumented but who've been living there a long time, are part of the community, providing them with a pathway in which they have to earn a legal status, but recognizing that they're there and we're not going to be separating out families. That's not who we are. That's not true to our values. And ultimately, it's not good for our economy. But you are absolutely right that part of the reason that some people take the illegal route is because we make the legal route so difficult. And so we're trying to identify ways to streamline that process. Now, I have to be honest, a lot of people want to come to America. So unless we just had no borders, there's always going to be a wait. There's always going to be background checks. There's always going to be some prioritization in terms of who's admitted and who's not. But I do think that there are practices we have, for example, where someone has a relation in the United States, is clearly qualified to become at some point a legal resident and maybe in the future a citizen. But in order to do it, they then have to first leave the country, wait. Now they're separated from their families. I mean, there have to be ways in which we can make the system clearer and less burdensome. Some of those changes we wanted to make were in the legislation that was proposed and passed the United States Senate. I think there is still the opportunity to get that done before my presidency is over.
Greetings, Mr. President.
How are you?
More life and blessings on you and your family.
What's your name?
My name is Miguel Williams, but you can call I Stepper.
Stepper.
Yes, man. Yeah, man. That is quite sufficient. Yeah, man. My question has to do and surrounds U.S. policy as it regards the legalization, the decriminalization of marijuana.
How did I anticipate this
Yeah,
question?
man. Yeah, man. And it, yeah, man.
How did I guess this question?
Yes, and Mr. President, it really comes on the foreground of we face economic challenges with the IMF, etc. And we find realistically that the hemp industry, the marijuana industry, provides a highly feasible alternative to rise up out of poverty. So I'm wanting to overstand and to understand how U.S. is visioning, how would you see Jamaica pushing forward on a decriminalization, legalization emphasis on the hemp industry? Give thanks.
Well, let me, I do want to separate out what are serious issues in the United States and then how that relates to our foreign policy and our interactions with the region. There is the issue of legalization of marijuana, and then there is the issue of decriminalizing or dealing with the incarceration and in some cases devastation of communities as a consequence of nonviolent drug offenses. I am a very strong believer that the path that we have taken in the United States in the so-called war on drugs has been so heavy in emphasizing incarceration that it has been counterproductive. You have young people who did not engage in violence, who get very long penalties, get placed in prison, and then are rendered economically unemployable, are almost pushed into then the underground economy, learn crime more effectively in prison. Families are devastated. So it's been very unproductive. And what we're trying to do is to reform our criminal justice system. And the good news is there has actually been some interest on the part of unlikely allies like the evangelical community or some otherwise very conservative Republicans, because it's very expensive to incarcerate people, and a recognition that this may not be the best approach. So that's one issue. There's then the second issue of legalizing marijuana, whether it's medical marijuana or recreational use. There are 2 states in the United States that have embarked on an experiment to decriminalize or legalize marijuana, Colorado and Washington State. And we will see how that experiment works its way through the process. Right now, that is not federal policy, and I do not foresee anytime soon Congress changing the law at a national basis. But I do think that if there are states that show that they are not suddenly a magnet for additional crime, that they have a strong enough public health infrastructure to push against the potential of increased addiction, then it's conceivable that that will spur on a national debate. but that is going to be some time off. In the United States, we need to decrease demand. We need to focus on a public health approach to decreasing demand. We have to stop the flow of guns and cash into the Caribbean and Central America and Latin America. And at the same time, I think the Caribbean, Latin America, Central America have to cooperate with us to try to shrink the power of the transnational drug organizations that are vicious and hugely destructive. And if we combine a public health perspective, a focus on not simply throwing every low-level person with possession into prison, but trying to get them treatment. We combine that with economic development and alternative opportunities for youth, then I think we can strike the right balance. All right, this young lady right here, go ahead.
Hello everyone. Hi Mr. President. My name is Davian Tucker and I'm the Guild President-elect for the University of the West Indies. Thank you. So my question is, the Jamaican government has been holding firmly to the stipulations of the IMF agreement. There are many who would like to know if the debt write-offs for Jamaica are being considered as a means of improving the livelihood of our people. So, is that being considered?
Well, this came up in my bilateral with your Prime Minister. And look, historically, I think there has been times where the IMF or the international multilateral organizations worked with governments in ways that weren't always productive, got them deep into debt, and then suddenly you got a lot more flowing out than was going in. In some cases, there were governments around the world that were corrupt, lent money, the money goes into a Swiss bank account, suddenly the people are paying off for decades. In Jamaica, some of it just had to do with tough circumstances, not always the best fiscal management. I think that the current government has been wise to work hard to abide by the IMF provisions. That's not been easy, and I think that has been the right thing to do. But what I also agreed with when I spoke to the Prime Minister is the need to try to address in a more systematic fashion how we can spur growth and not just put the squeeze on folks, because what it turns out is that if the best way for a country to reduce its debt is to grow really fast and to generate more income. Now, that does require development plans and approaches that are productive. And it is true that sometimes that requires some short-term sacrifice. And I think the question that if the people of Jamaica, just like people of the United States and everywhere else, should be asking is, if the government is spending money right now, is it on something that is going to help create long-term growth and help people succeed? If the answer is no, you shouldn't spend that money. Spending money just for the sake of spending money that's not the formula for success. But if the money is being spent on what we talked about, early childhood education, if it's being spent on infrastructure, if it's being spent on research, if it's being spent on building skills for workers, those are good investments. And I do think that the international financial institutions have to accommodate the interests of countries who have a sound plan for growth so that they can not just stay in this static state, but can, over time, thrive and succeed. And the way that's going to happen is because of outstanding young leaders like you. I've had a great conversation. Thank you, Jamaica. Thank you. Appreciate it, young leaders. God bless you.
Parents, assist your children with their schoolwork. That means help. Don't do it for them. Every assignment, such as school-based assessments, SBAs, should be written and researched by the students. Doing the assignment is not helping your child, but rather teaching him or her to take shortcuts and even being dishonest.
SBAs are expected to be developmental. They are aligned to the syllabus, and it is really to assist the students in developing those fundamental concepts for them to do well in the examination itself.
Doing your child's assignment is a breach of the educational regulations which carry severe sanctions. Be of help. Don't be dishonest.
April is Farmers' Month. 30 days to shine the spotlight on the men and women who keep our bodies nourished. Right now, onion vegetable farmers out of St. Thomas.
By 2017, onion import to the island is expected to be reduced by 90 to 100% under the Onion Development Program.
The objectives of the program to achieve that overall goal essentially is to build the capacity of farmers and technocrats in onion production and marketing.
So assistance through the $10 million GOJ Adaptation Fund program put farmers to work. The program is being administered by the Planning Institute of Jamaica.
They significantly came in with financial resources in the provision of seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, and land preparation.
Between September 2014 and January 2015, over 70 hectares of onion were planted. 35 of those hectares are in the agro-parks. Ongoing harvesting from March to May 2015 is expected to yield over 1 million kilograms of onions. And of that number, 600,000 kilograms will be reaped from farms within the agro-parks network. The remaining 500,000 kilograms are expected from farms outside of the network.
That is considerable, ladies and gentlemen, in light of the fact that in 2030, we only produce 680 tons.
This initiative has shifted onion production norm of 12 tons per hectare closer to the 20 tons needed to satisfy local demand and achieve self-sufficiency for the country. A tour of the Yallas Agro Park in St. Thomas showed reaping in high gear. 20 hectares of onion is now under production there, a 100% increase over the same period in 2014. Agriculture and Fisheries Minister Derek Kelly says this level of production, which is being facilitated under the Onion Development Program, is expected to reduce importation by 15% in this first phase.
We are prepared in the ministry to do all we can to see and ensure the success of these agro-parks and the particular crops that we have targeted. So between RADA, NIC and the ministry and the people in research, I think we have an adequate team to make sure that this program succeeds.
We have a twofold involvement. One, we provide the water service, and then we have the on-farm water management service. We advise the farmer in the initial stage how to design their irrigation systems, and then when we provide the water, when they become customers, we provide the day-to-day advice on when is time to irrigate or when is not.
In addition to the GOJ Adaptation Fund program, the success of the Onion Development Program is also credited to other supportive divisions of the Ministry of Agriculture.
We have the National Irrigation Commission, Research and Development, the Rural Agricultural Development Authority, Agricultural Land Management Division. That's very important. That's what was formerly called the Rural Physical Planning Division. This has to do with the soil analysis and so on, which are critical to what we want to do. Project Management, the Marketing Division. These are important allies within our team in going forward.
And the farmers at Yallas, they welcome the program.
We got 2 assistants from the GOJ Adapted Fund and JSIF, and where we got irrigation equipment such as drip and tank, and that assisted us and hose in terms of the 50 mm and 40 mm 32. They assist us in taking the water to the farm so that we can have adequate water to water the crops on the farm, and we are really grateful.
The program is a big help to us, and I like when the government come in and helping the farmer in St. Thomas. Right, so I wish they come and give us more help so we can produce more, so we can feed ourselves, so we can cut off all of the import because we can grow this right here.
I thought it to be a very sustainable way of income, and it will also create employment for other persons around the community. This is the first onion crop for me. I will be receiving about 20-some thousand pounds, and I think that is still a good benefit in terms of the yield.
Oh, pirates, yes, they robbed I, sold I to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit, but my head was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We fought in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing? Let me hear you sing. Redemption song, redemption song. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Have no fear for atomic energy. None of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Now won't you help to sing these songs of freedom?
Before we go, a tip on finding prosperity. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. U.S. President Barack Obama's advice to us to always be of our best. The information continues to flow on our website, jis.gov.jm. You may also follow us on Twitter, JIS News. Our YouTube channel, Watch JIS, has loads of videos and interviews. We'll be back on your favorite TV station tomorrow. Until then, I'm Adrian Atkinson. On behalf of the hardworking team here at the JIS, have yourselves a wonderful Sunday.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.